It's a heat check. You knew that was coming. It's heat check time.
Welcome to the Heat Check Podcast. I'm your host, John Gonzalez. I wouldn't say quite emergency, but emergency-ish. A little over 24 hours after Jimmy Butler is traded to the Philadelphia 76ers, we bring in Isaac's here. Isaac's always here, but we bring in two of our heavy hitters. One of my favorite Philadelphians, Chris Ryan, is in the studio. And not quite, you missed the cut on the favorite Philadelphian by like 90 miles.
All right.
But you would otherwise be
It's all
grandfathered in. Jason Concepcion is here.
All three of us hate Boston. So
Right, and it unites us. We're united in hate.
And it's a great time to be that person.
It is a great time to hate Boston. It's wonderful. The first note on my outline here, gang, holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
I had a nice Saturday plan. I was talking to Chris about other things Sixers related, and all of a sudden everything got blown up. The Sixers traded Robert Covington, Dario Saric, Jared Bayless, R.I.P. Jared Bayless, and a 2022 second-round pick for Jimmy Butler and Justin Patton, who plays in the NBA. Let's go around the horn. How do we feel about it? Initial reactions.
A couple of Philly friends asked me about this last night. Obviously, I was talking about it for 24 straight hours. And over the course of this conversation, I think I developed a bit of a reputation in terms of how I was approaching it. And somebody introduced my take to someone else as being like, CR is nervous. And I was like, I'm not nervous. I'm pessimistic.
Oh, that's worse than nervous.
It's different. It's different.
And worse.
It means my nerve endings are dead. It means that this era of NBA volatility and player movement and anything can happen at any time has kind of made me a little dead to like the shock of something like this. In a weird way, I almost was like, yeah, I expected this. But I am pessimistic about how this is going to work long term for a lot of different reasons. And we're going to get to all of those.
Yeah, we have a lot of things to get into. I just want like the macro, like your first reaction when you heard that this went down and what you thought, like good or bad for the Sixers. We'll get to the Wolves component. That's going to be a part that we'll discuss as well.
The Sixers are on the clock now. You know, Jimmy's a guy with a window.
A lot of people are on the clock for that organization.
It's time. Now it's time to actually win games. No more of this developing. It's really the death of the process in a very real way, which made me kind of sad.
Yeah, I wrote about that for the Ringer.com. Yes. We have a bunch of stuff on the Ringer.com. We have that piece. KOC handled the basketball side for the Sixers. Charks did the basketball side for the Wolves. Paolo and Justin did winners and losers. My initial reaction was exactly that, that like this whole organic, homegrown, go and pluck Rocco off of the G League for no money whatsoever. And then after that, followed it up with like a very reasonable contract and get Dario, and he's got 2 years that he stashed away in Europe, and it's cool, and we'll take our time. Taking your time is over. Yeah, this is a signal right now that like they think it's time to go. Let's see how this goes. And initially my reaction was, I look at the Eastern Conference and I go, the Sixers, and KOC put this in his piece, the Sixers now have 3 of the top 20 players in the league, and only the Warriors can also say that. So they're better.
Yeah, it's going to test a lot of what we think we know about building championship teams. Yeah. I think it was the right trade and the wrong guy.
I think they're better, but I also think they're thinner. So it's kind of weird because I go, I like Jimmy Butler in a vacuum, but there's no vacuum with Jimmy Butler.
There's not a lot of touchdown dances going on, and as there probably wouldn't be because I think Covington and Saric were particularly beloved members of the Sixers. And even last night, as they were talking to the guys on the team when they lost to Memphis, they were asking a bunch of them, and Embiid was like, I was like kind of tearing up. Everybody was like, it was kind of a gut punch. You know, hilariously, Embiid was like, I was texting with Wiggs about Butler. I was like, great. Sounds like a great TripAdvisor review. What does Wiggins think of Butler? But, you know, I think everybody's like, this sort of playful preschool is about to turn into a lion's den.
Right. So, all right, let's do the off-court drama-y stuff, right? Because there's a lot of it with Jimmy Butler, and you have, when Embiid's first reaction is to text Wiggins, like I was also like, oh, already? That's probably not great.
The
like
Kansas
maybe just
Bagman brotherhood is strong.
It is strong. So Embiid said that he was well aware, obviously. How could you not be well aware of everything that's been happening in Minnesota and the reputation that Jimmy Butler carries with him? As I wrote in the piece, like whatever happened in Minnesota and the way that Jimmy Butler would give it to guys, that's not going to happen in Philly for a lot of reasons, because like Jimmy Butler has met his match in terms of shit talking with Joel Embiid for sure. Like Embiid is not the take it kind of guy. He's the give it back to you, whether you're playing pickup or practice or in the game.
Yeah, I wonder how Wiggins answered the phone. Was he like, this is not Andrew Wiggins, this is Reek Nance? Yeah, it's really, that part of it is fascinating because, you know, the kind of, we can roll Fultz out there to start, and then we'll start JJ in the second half, and don't worry about Dario, like he'll figure it out over time. Well, you know, it's like he's getting better. All that kind of like wait and figure it out stuff is done. Now it's like, okay, need shooters. Guys have to produce. So what does that mean when you're bringing in one of the most outspoken guys in the league who's not afraid to talk shit to people, and you have a guy on your squad who is struggling with his confidence, and it's a fan base that, when push comes to shove, is going to rally around its players, which Jimmy is kind of on the outside of that at this point. So it's how this could all break out. I can't wait to see it.
Like on the surface, like if you were going to talk about a Philadelphia archetypal player, somebody who would fit into like the ethos of the city and like what we generally gravitate towards, you would think like Jimmy Butler's pretty perfect. He's mouthy. He gets after people defensively. Sure. He's 1,000 miles an hour at all times, no breaks. But as Jason mentioned, he's being introduced into an environment that like has like a really strong, solid core fan base, and got very attached to the two guys who got sent out. Right. And Brett Brown has been building a culture, and he's been put a lot of emphasis onto that. And I just wonder about like the attendant volatility and whether he can operate in that environment. And if he can't, and if he gives like a post-game quote one game after maybe they lose on a back-to-back and he pops off, like, how does the fan base react? How does the media react? How does the team react? Like, there's a lot of potential ripple effects.
It's a question about whether or not Jimmy Butler likes living in the eye of the flame or not. He and his team have been very available to people who want to go do, I sat down with Jimmy Butler. Sam had one in The Athletic the other day. It is quite a read.
It's a great one.
Yeah. It's eyebrow singeing.
41 minutes. That shit has got to stop.
Yeah, he's complaining about how many minutes he's playing. He's talking about how he does or doesn't choose whether he's going to play. All he wants to do is listen to his country music and read his Bible. Incredible. And he doesn't have time to read any other shit, but if he did, he wouldn't, because those people don't know what they're talking about. Like, he is a very strong personality. And you said the word volatility. And I think that this move is so emblematic of how volatile the league is right now, man. Yeah, it's just the way this league started this season, despite the fact that we're just going to be here in June and being like, wow, the Warriors only lost 6 games in the entire playoffs or something at most or something. You know, the Rockets not doing well. Carmelo being on a milk carton. The Raptors and Bucks being better even than I think we could have imagined them being. The Celtics sputtering a little bit. Like, all the little things that are happening. And you introduce that into, it turns out if you hire Coach Bud or a guy like him or a guy as good as him, you can change the right ceiling of your team. And then you add into that pre-agency, which is just like now a reality, which is basically now we're all waiting to hear when Anthony Davis is like, I probably am not re-signing. You know, like, this is this reality. And this trade really represents that to me, because it's a volatile character. It's a guy who's exercised his pre-agency. It's a guy who we can talk about it being the last couple of months, but it's really been the last couple of years with Jimmy. It goes back to 14-15, rejecting a contract offer, winning most improved player, then signing a deal that he obviously didn't like almost immediately, and immediately like starting to talk his way out of Chicago after that. I mean, this is a chaotic player. Yeah. And I think that the Sixers were a little bit ahead of schedule last year. And now they felt like they were behind schedule at the beginning of this season because of how good the Bucks and the Raptors look. They're the 4th best team in this conference now. You know, all of a sudden they're like, oh, we're going to be conference title and NBA Finals contenders for the next 6-7 years. No, you're second round and out, dog.
Playing catch up. And like that, how quickly that changes is bananas.
That's what I'm saying.
The knock-on effect of Jimmy putting them on the clock is going to be fascinating to watch, because like, you can't sit around and let guys figure it out anymore. Like, Fultz, there's no time for him to just like figure out when to be a shooter. They traded away 2 of their most consistent shooters now. So like, shooting is at a premium with this team. Right. There's no time to figure out how Ben and Embiid are going to work together on the court. How do you fix the kind of like my turn, his turn stuff? Now it's time to win.
Yeah. And like, to Chris's point about like the hierarchy of the league and the balance of power and how quickly it changes. Like, I was with you where last year I was like, oh, this is all, you're playing with house money, right? You got plenty of time.
Right. We had people coming up and being like, doesn't it feel good? You guys are going to be great for 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you wake up and you go, oh shit, we're way behind. Like, and the Celtics series was a massive wake up call on that one.
Yep.
And then you start this season, you get off to not a great start, and Dario wasn't playing great. And you look at what you have with Fultz and you're still wondering, and you go, oh shit, yeah, they need a lot more shooting. They need more defense. They need a lot of everything. And you've got to go and gamble on something like this. And I think it is, for all of the reasons that we outlined, and we're going to bore down into like the actual basketball components here, but for all of like the very surfacey macro components, a risk, but one that I'm glad they took.
Here, I'll make the case for it. I'm not sentimental about Rocco and Dario. This is going to happen. They were always going to do this.
That hurts me. You're already desensitized.
No,
I wanted
it was
little...
right. If it wasn't going to be Butler, it was going to be somebody else.
It was going to be something. It was going to be.
And it was going to be those two
I would have
guys.
rather that they had gone for someone like Beal, personally.
Sure.
But this was going to happen.
Ernie Grunfeld is riding that trio.
This is a consequence
fucking sunset
of blowing consecutive lottery picks. Yeah. This is also a consequence of not getting LeBron or Kawhi or Paul George last summer, and they are not getting Clay or Kevin next summer. So that means the list is down to 1.5 guys, depending on how truly dedicated the Celtics and Kyrie are to one another. And Kyrie doesn't really work on the Sixers anyway.
No, well, so
you basically are down to one guy. And they made the deal. And they actually didn't pay that big of a price for it, relatively.
No, I actually, my initial reaction was, I'm surprised this is all it took. When it was just a second pick, and you toss in Bayless.
Thank God for Tom Thibodeau.
For salary matching purposes. And I like Robert Covington a lot. He's on a fucking fantastic deal. Somebody's going to pay Dario Saric a lot of money. Probably wasn't going to be the Sixers, but I love him. But just like those two pieces, they're not nothing. There's something significant, but I just expected for Jimmy Butler it would be more. But when you're talking about what are you going to get in free agency? I think the Sixers and a lot of teams that had cap space anticipated, hey man, we can go and just throw money at people and they'll walk in. And obviously they would have much rather just signed them into the cap space rather than giving up assets. Guess what? A lot of teams got money. And guess what? It's fucking hard to land people in free agency. And if you miss and the music stops and there's all these chairs left, how are you going to fill them? And so you go out and you make a trade and you hope that he sticks around. And I know a lot of people have said if he walks, worst case scenario, the Sixers could potentially free up $50 million. Right.
For who?
And get fucking who?
There's nobody out there.
Yes. No, they need to fucking, if he walks, that's a goddamn disaster.
Yeah. Re-sign Dario.
Right. You toss the money back at him.
It's a good example of kind of like the effect that the super team era has had on the down market teams, which is if you want to beat the top team in your conference, a lot of times you're just going to have to roll the dice with something. You're just going to have to be okay, maybe this works, maybe it doesn't, but I don't see any other way that we beat the Celtics or Toronto really this year, who look like a freaking juggernaut, or how you beat the Warriors. This is the same kind of thing that led Houston to make the Melo deal, because it's okay, what do we, how are we going to beat those guys? Head up. We can't. We have to make a deal. While
we're still on that sort of top line reaction component, when we're talking about the Sixers having 3 top 20 players and trying to keep, you're shaking your head. You're not sure about that.
I think they are, but I think it's also a thing where these are 2 players that are so early in their development cycle that it's
who knows?
There are holes in their game that need addressing, and who knows where they are in 3 years.
I look at Embiid this year and go, he's taken a step forward. He's playing considerably better at both ends of the floor. With Simmons, there hasn't been such a big leap, or he hasn't taken the step as significantly as I expected. But they have 3 key players that I think in the Eastern Conference makes the players. But this is the part that I wanted to get to. So where now are they in the Eastern Conference hierarchy? I mean, because I look at the Raptors and I go, they've got Kawhi, so they've got one guy who's better than anybody else the Sixers have. However, the Sixers have more of them. But then, however, the Raptors are considerably deeper.
10 guys,
They're
20
so
minutes.
fucking deep. They're so deep. The Celtics, okay, I think the Sixers are in that mix now, right? I think they're probably better just on terms of top tier talent than the Bucks. But when you have Giannis, that's a question mark. Even after getting Jimmy, I don't go, oh shit, the Eastern Conference is theirs. It's not.
They move up a slot, maybe 4th, 5th.
Does it get them to the conference finals?
Maybe. I don't think so.
Actually, I think seeding is going to matter a lot.
Yeah, it's going to matter a lot.
It's and I don't even mean that home court advantage as much as who they catch in the second round is going to make a huge difference this season.
Yeah, I mean, if they open up in the 4-5 against the Celtics, that's a problem.
Right. I mean, I think it does create a little bit of separation, with all due respect, between Raptors, Celtics, Sixers, and Bucks. And then the Pacers are a little bit below that. Yeah. You know what I mean? And the Pacers can beat almost anybody on any given night, but I just don't think they have the firepower. It's so interesting, man. I know we're going to get into the on-court stuff, but it's everything I think about with this trade is so theoretical. And it's everything I think about team building is so theoretical with this. It's Ben Simmons' numbers aren't as they have not taken a leap. Ben Simmons' numbers are entirely tied to a record, because Ben Simmons does all the stuff that is 16 points, 13 assists, 9 rebounds, and no shots outside of 3 feet. You know what I mean? I'm never going to be my eyes aren't going to fall out of my head, but when Simmons leads him on a 7-game win streak, you're that guy's Jason Kidd and Magic Johnson's body or whatever. It's just, there's this excitement about him either way. Embiid, on the other hand, is nothing but absolutely gaudy stats.
Yeah.
But could barely beat Charlotte, and which is like fine. I mean, like they were obviously like headed towards a trade, and then the next night they lose to Memphis, and Embiid had absolutely no win left in him. But I don't know. I mean, like I'm not concerned about Ben and Joel as much as I just don't even know if Jimmy Butler is enough. I don't know.
Amazing.
I mean, the exciting thing to me is how he ties Simmons and Embiid's games together. I mean, you need a shot creator, somebody who can operate with the ball in their hands and score from more places on the court than right at the rim. And Jimmy Butler can do that. How does his ability to create space make Ben Simmons' life easier? How does it allow Simmons and Embiid to coexist on the court together? I think that's going to be really cool. KOC touched on, can you use Ben Simmons as a screener in a Jimmy Butler, Ben Simmons pick and roll? Like, that's a cool thing to do. All that stuff is really interesting, but is that enough firepower to really win?
Can I ask both you guys a question?
Yeah.
Do you like Jimmy Butler's game?
It's fine.
This is something that I wanted to get into, just like the aesthetics and entertainment
I've watched
value
a lot
of
of
this.
Jimmy Butler mixtapes over the last 24 hours.
So I'm outside the mainstream on this one, I'm sure. I like guys who generate points by getting to the line and converting efficiently, right? Like Jimmy Butler is an okay shooter. He's a slightly better league average shooter on spot ups. He'll be fine with spacing the floor. He can do that. But what he's really good at, and what the Sixers have lacked, and what we saw in that Charlotte game that you mentioned, and what we saw in that Memphis game that they dropped, was when they didn't really have a closer. And we saw that in Boston too last year, where it was like, oh shit, you're not going to rely on Ben Simmons to go and just pull up and shoot, because he can't and he doesn't. Right. And Embiid is, he'll try to do too much and he'll fumble one out of bounds off his knee, and that'll be it. And you need a closer. And he's that guy. He's that guy who will hit a shot or get to the line, which I know, not the sexiest thing to watch. I enjoy it. It's like he's going to do the James Harden thing where he's going to shimmy shake you and he's going to get contact and it's going to drive you fucking nuts. And then he's going to hit his free throws. And thank you. Yes, I like that. He's grimacing at me right now, by the way, Chris Ryan.
I just think not having to have Fultz and Ben Simmons on the court at the same time is really big.
Yeah.
I know that's like a really simplistic thing to say, but it's huge. Having a league average shooter that can create on the floor with Ben Simmons at the same time that's huge. I still don't think that's enough firepower to get them out of the East, but it'll be really exciting in the ways that it opens up Ben Simmons' game. Particularly.
You asked us this and we gave you our entertainment aesthetic answers, and I feel like there's a thought percolating in your head.
Every need that the Sixers have, he fills.
Yeah.
He's a better on-ball defender than Covington. He's an absolute alpha closer in the fourth quarter. He generates tons of contact, will get other guys who are important to the other team. He can get Tatum in foul trouble in a playoff game. He can get Jaylen Brown in foul trouble in a playoff game. He could torment some of Toronto's wings and get them in. Honestly, just on a basketball level, I'm losing my mind. I can't wait to see Jimmy Butler versus Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs or Jimmy Butler versus Jason Tatum in the playoffs. That's great.
I feel like there's a massive butt coming.
Well, because recency bias, if you watch the few Minnesota games he played, it looked like a guy trying to destroy a basketball team.
Right.
He would do things that were even from my not cleaning the glass perspective, I was like, wow, so he dribbled for 9 seconds and then got a double and took that double into the corner and handed it off to a shooter in the corner who was also being guarded, so that the shooter in the corner was now triple teamed. And then didn't move to create space again. He has a little bit of what are you doing out there? I was good. I had a much less kind way of putting that,
I think a lot of that, which is the concern that carries over to the Sixers, is that if Jimmy senses a weakness in his teammates, an unwillingness to kind of be the kind of hard ass that he wants, he will just do shit, And so the hope is that, yes, Jimmy Butler burned down a house, but he's not an arsonist, not in his heart.
Yeah.
So that's the hope now is
Fred Hoiberg is currently rebuilding a house being like, you're fucking kidding me?
Right? when Markelle Fultz is passes up a wide open three in the corner or shoots it 4 feet past the basket, the hope is that Jimmy Butler will not give him a look that actually withers his insides. Or talks wild shit to him in the locker room. That is the hope.
My bigger point was also just that Jimmy Butler plays a kind of bruising, but requires a lot of patience. Basically, he derives a lot of usage out of just the way he plays. He dribbles hard. He takes a lot of contact. He likes to wait out defenses and find a weak point and attack that weak point and see what he can get out of it. He takes a lot of challenges, whether it's shooting over a guy or shooting at the hoop, with a bunch of dudes jumping at him. There's something about it that it is a very heroic but not always conducive to team basketball way of playing.
He's a throwback guy.
The
in a lot
way
of
he
ways.
made his name was when he saved those Bulls teams in the years that Rose was injured, right? And since then, I have not seen him work in any kind of team context.
So to your point about team building, and to your point earlier about how the clock has started, then for me, that's a lot of Brett Brown, right? You've got Brett Brown at the middle of this going, okay, if Jimmy is going to pound the ball for 9 seconds and try to burn the house down, he's got to run out there with the fucking fire extinguisher. And then, oh, by the way, this whole thing about culture that he's been talking about for years, and he's done a really good job with it. I mean, by all accounts, everybody I talk to over there will say when things were really dark and terrible and grim and they were in danger of setting league records for losses in a season, Brett Brown was the one constant. He was the one out there answering the questions and keeping those guys together. And JJ talks about it on his podcast. Now it's a different equation that he has to solve, and a much more complicated one.
Managing the ego of a guy who is looking at possible $190 million contract extension is a different challenge than managing the egos of two young guys. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? We're going to see how good Brett Brown really is.
We are going to see how good Brett Brown really is. I want to bore down into the actual basketball about this.
Sure.
And also touch on the Wolves, because the Wolves made a trade too. It wasn't just the Sixers. But first, let's take a break for a word from our sponsors. Today's Heat Check is brought to you by Casper. Casper is a sleep brand that continues to revolutionize its line of products to create an exceptionally comfortable sleep experience, one night at a time, with 3 mattress models: the original Casper, the Wave, and the Essential. Casper mattresses are perfectly designed to soothe and cradle your natural geometry. Not to mention, the breathable design helps you sleep cool and regulates your body temperature through the night. And it's delivered right to your door in a small, how do they do that size box, with free shipping and returns in the US and Canada. But the best part is that you can be sure of your purchase with Casper's 100-night risk-free Sleep On It trial. After all, you spend 1/3 of your life sleeping, so you should be comfortable. Now, I don't have a Casper yet. I kind of want a Casper because Isaac Lee, our esteemed producer, he has one. He loves it.
Yeah, I recently moved to the east side of Los Angeles, and I had been sleeping on a spring mattress, and I just switched to a Casper mattress. Let me tell you, it is actually incredible. I've never slept on a foam mattress before, and the way that it kind of contorts to your body and make sure it's supporting your body while you're sleeping, incredible stuff. I have chronic back problems because I edit audio all day, and it's helped a lot with that.
Anecdotally, gang, I'll say this. We generally record Heat Check very early on a Monday. This one, obviously, special circumstances, so we're doing it on a Sunday. But normally, early on a Monday, and Isaac, much less cranky now that he has a Casper mattress, comes in, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, he's ready to rock. And guess what? You go out and get a Casper mattress, you get $50 toward select mattresses by visiting casper.com/NBA and using NBA at the checkout as your code. That's casper.com/NBA. Offer code NBA for $50 off your mattress purchase. Terms and conditions apply. And now, back to Heat Check. All right, so basketball-wise, again, my initial reaction was they're better, and then they're also thinner because now the lineups are going to shift. And this idea about Fultz being in the starting lineup and bringing him along slowly, that's over.
Yeah, it's gone.
He's going to be coming off the bench. You're going to move JJ back into the starting lineup.
What's your favorite Sixers starting 5?
Well, that's the question, because they traded from last year's best starting 5 lineup in the league. 2 of those guys now play for Minnesota. Mm-hmm. So you're going to move JJ into the lineup. You've got Embiid, obviously, and Simmons and Butler. Now the question is, do you go with Shamet? Do you go with Wilson Chandler? I'm probably going to go Wilson Chandler eventually and bring Shamet off the bench as this sort of JJ mini-me. The problem with that is Wilson Chandler's got a nagging hamstring injury. Wilson Chandler has a lot of miles on him. How does he look with Jimmy Butler, let alone how does Jimmy Butler look with Simmons? How does, what happens with the usage rate there? Yeah. There's a lot of questions about how these guys are going to fit.
Yeah. I feel like we're looking at an unfinished piece of work here. I think there's something
more to come.
Another trade. I don't really know if Korver is the answer, which is the one that's getting tossed around a lot.
They definitely need more shooting.
But I probably would go ahead and start a veteran team. I would start Simmons and Embiid with Redick, Chandler, and Jimmy, and have that be the starting lineup. I think it's good for Jimmy too. It puts him with a bunch of guys who know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. That, let's have Shamet and see if he's still playing out over his head out there. Let's let Fultz grow. At this point, like Markelle Fultz, unless he just doesn't have a phone, knows that there's a lot of skepticism about him.
Yes.
So why not just have him play second unit and see if he can come along and put him in that kind of Malik Monk, like anything is good.
That's kind of a silver lining for this, is that there's no more like, okay, how do I simultaneously serve these two masters of developing Markelle Fultz and building his confidence and putting together a lineup that works together in a 2018 basketball way, and now you don't have to deal with that if you put out that kind of starting
the
five.
team immediately after everything that Jason has been saying and what you guys have been saying about like the clock ticking, like this team now all of a sudden becomes a meritocracy. And if Markelle can't play his way past TJ McConnell, he may fall out of the rotation entirely. I don't think that that's smart for his A, career, or B, trade value, but that is like in play.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, you saw with a short, small, shrunken roster against the Grizzlies the other night when TJ was on the floor at the end of the game because they needed somebody with a little spark and a little defense, and that was when they needed warm bodies out there, and they had to go to TJ. So I wonder.
And Markelle was fine last night.
He was fine. Yeah. He was fine. The game before that, less fine, and that's been pretty consistent with him. Where it's like, oh, the only consistent thing is inconsistency, and you're still not sure what you're going to get out of him. And I think that idea of this being a meritocracy and like no more. Hey, like if there are games where you catch a DNP CD,
that's it.
Like it's the big leagues, brother. And I don't know what to tell you about it. And sometimes I think maybe I'm looking at something completely different. But after the trade went down, one of the reactions that came out of Philly from people I talked to was, at least they didn't have to throw Fultz in the deal. And my reaction was, what? Like my reaction was, you couldn't give him away right now.
Yeah,
like, there's no value there. The only value is for him to come up through that organization and like somehow correct whatever the fuck is wrong with him. Otherwise,
I was listening to Dunked On as I was driving, and they were like, "You have to trade him right now."
Yeah, listen.
Good luck.
He played pretty well. He plays hard, and he played pretty well last game. But like, he's bad. Inconsistency, yes, is a part of it. He's a bad basketball player right now. He's not good. He hampers your team in a way that is brutal. And when you look at it with the lack of shooting that exists within the team already, it's devastating. He was brought in because he checked a number of boxes that the team absolutely needed. They needed a creator. They needed a guy who can operate in the pick and roll and create his own shot and could shoot from outside, and he can't do that stuff. So the training wheels have to come off at some point. And like, if he can play, he can play. And if he's not playing well, great.
Or he gets stuck in the garage. I mean, there's really no way around that. And the problem here is that there wants more. I'm with you. I think that this is an incomplete product, that they need to go out and get something else. And I don't know if that's going to be via trade for a guy like Kyle Korver, who on paper would fit very well. He's a bigger body. He doesn't get enough credit. He's a shooter. That'd be wonderful. Maybe Ariza shakes loose from the Suns. But it could also be that the Sixers end up like once more looking for cast-offs on the buyout market, right? Where they're just like, oh, well, last year it worked out okay where they ended up with Ersan and Bellinelli, but those guys way overperformed last year. And I think like trying to hope for that to be reproduced this season is folly.
I would hope, honestly, if they are going in this direction, like tear the Band-Aid off. Like go for it.
Right.
Go for someone. Like what does it take? What do the Wizards want for Beal? What do you have to give up here?
What do you have left? Yeah, what do you have left?
They have one lottery pick with an esophagus problem, and they've got another lottery pick who can't shoot. But those are two lottery picks, and Wilson Chandler's expiring.
And you've got the unprotected Miami pick.
Unprotected Miami pick. They have a package. I don't think, like, according to Woj, the Wizards were completely uninterested in parting with Beal in any conversations with the Wolves about Butler. I can't imagine if it ever comes to...
Things are going great in Washington, and Ernie likes his team, Chris.
And I know that Wall is essentially, like, untradeable at this point because of his contract and what his game looks like right now, whereas Beal is basically JV Klay Thompson.
Yeah.
But they may not have a choice in that matter. They may be stuck with Wall, and in which case, if they're going to rebuild it all, if they have that kind of foresight. Look, I'm not even saying the Sixers could even get a phone call back on that one, but I think I would rather see them actually swing for the absolute green monster fence than be like, what about Kyle Korver? What about some scrap heap guy who got tossed off by a team that's tanking? Why not? What are we doing? You think Korver is going to fix it? Korver is just going to get hunted in the postseason.
Yeah, no, I think you're making some good points. I'm still wrapping my head around the accelerated timetable.
I mean, it's
where it goes from, hold on, let's this thing's moving now, things are fine, to the gas pedal is all the way down and the brake line has been fucking cut and the cliff is coming all of a sudden, where you're like, yes, sure, trade fucking everything. And I don't know if I'm quite there yet.
As a fan or as a person who's like, this is where this is going?
I mean, if you're just asking me for fucking content, yeah, let's do your plan. If you're asking me, would I do that were I in charge / do I want to see the team that I watch the most do that? Then that's a different equation. I
mean, listen, when you guys re-sign Jimmy, when the Sixers re-sign Jimmy, the best years of that contract are going to be in the beginning. It's going to be
no doubt about it.
This is a guy that's going to, like, everything we know about players with this kind of play style and with the injury history that he has, they will fall off. He will fall off. The end of this contract that he will sign with the Sixers is going to be tough. So I agree. Like,
smaller window than people.
It's very small. Yeah. So, like, let's hit it now. And then if it does fall apart, listen, you've still got these two young guys that you can cobble together something around again. But, like, the time has come to, like, go for it the next 2 years.
So, in theory, all of this makes sense, what you're saying, but then I remember like the way that the NBA landscape looks, and I see over on the horizon, if let's just say that the Sixers go with that plan, right?
Which plan? Like Corver?
Fuck it all.
Fuck it all, Beal. Give me somebody.
A fourth guy who's a major name who would be a shooter and help space the floor and like exactly what you're saying. Let's say for like theoretically, or for the purposes of this hypothetical, that it is Bradley Beal. Mm-hmm. Does that get them past the Warriors? Because ultimately, you still have a Warriors problem in the next year to 2 years.
I mean, I really literally find myself becoming aroused thinking about that. Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Bradley Beal, podcast. And Jimmy Butler versus the Warriors. Yeah, like the three of us would probably be on the bench for the Sixers at that point.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, isn't that what the whole Daryl Morey, the Warriors have forced us to change our risk profile thing is?
Yeah.
I mean, they lose in 5, but I want Jimmy Butler and Draymond like at each other's necks for a series. I would love to see that.
Well, in advance. I mean, you'd get that the entire time. If he's threatening to fight Tristan Thompson in the parking lot, yeah, you definitely get that. That's the one that gives me pause, because even if you could make that happen, which is a massive if, and I would bet strongly against it. Even if you could make it happen, I understand why Daryl thinks that way. But then I look at the Sixers timetable and I go, Jimmy Butler now changes it, yes, but your other two guys kind of still don't. It's a tough middle ground. I guess you've already committed. I guess you've already decided. By getting Jimmy Butler, they've already decided.
Jason's saying like they're going to do, when they do this deal and the bad years, the back end of that contract are going to be coming up really fast with a guy like Jimmy Butler with a history of lower leg injuries or leg injuries. I mean, they could very well just be like, this isn't worth it. We have 55 or however much now of cap space. Dario and Robert hurts. It's a bad move on our part. We took a shot, but we're not going to like sacrifice the long-term stability of this franchise by signing Jimmy Butler to a 5-year, $190 million deal when in any given moment he might just be like, trade me.
Yeah. And then, by the way, the Woj report had massive caveats in it on that front where he was like, they fully expect, because if you're the Sixers, you've got to get some sort of wink and nod assurance that Jimmy is on board with the idea, at least, of sticking around. But the Woj report was that the Sixers fully expect, barring any physical issues with Jimmy Butler, which he's got a lot of, Tibbs fucking ran him into the ground in 2 different spots. And then on top of that, how he fits with the quote Embiid-Simmons dynamic, which, as we outlined at the top of the show, big question mark.
Big if.
So yeah, I mean, they've got a lot that they've got to figure out. I mean, my initial reaction was, like, if the Sixers were going to do something like this, and I wrote this in the piece that like Philadelphians had been sort of fantasizing about it for a long time. I always thought when the Sixers got to this point that the universal reaction in Philadelphia would have been like, fuck yeah, this is, it's a home run, right? It's a home run if you're going to do something like this. And instead the initial reaction was like, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. They still need more probably.
I think that speaks to how spectacularly fucked up Jimmy Butler's behaving.
He's really, I mean, the petulance has been off the charts. I think it speaks to that, and I think it speaks to the fact that the NBA is extremely top heavy, and as you just said, does that get them past the Warriors? No, it doesn't.
It doesn't necessarily even get them out of the Eastern Conference.
Just to remind everybody, 2 years ago, I think it was 2 seasons ago, might have even been a season ago, the GMs in this league said that they would take Karl Anthony Towns over any young player, like whatever that thing was. Where they were like, that guy's a fucking puddle of tears right now. You know what I mean? That guy is a Smith song. And this is where, and like, so we have these 2 long-term projects on our team, like Joel and I agree. Ben and Joel do not seem like shrinking violet millennials the way that Wiggins and Towns might, but that's why people aren't ready to throw a mummers parade yet, I think, is because they're like, so the guy who has destroyed 2 locker rooms already and seems completely obsessed with whether or not he's going to get this 5-year deal. And now the Sixers are on the hook for that 5. The Sixers, if they say no, they're going to be the latest team that are just like, Jimmy wanted this extra year. You know what I mean? And the Sixers now are the ones that are like, we're not going to do that. You know what I mean?
I'd prefer that they don't throw any mummers parades, period. But beyond that, just because it reminded me of this, we're also introducing Jimmy Butler into a locker room that includes Mike Muscala and Mike Muscala's dad,
No.
who is not in the locker room, but Mike Muscala's dad was being racist about Jimmy Butler.
And to be fair, I don't think Mike Muscala's dad is in the locker room.
No, not in the locker room, but you know what I'm saying?
And
locker
also,
room
I don't think
adjacent.
Mike Muscala was like that. He was not like he was like cool dad. He was like, I'm really
He's
embarrassed.
like, yeah, this guy sucks. I'm sorry about that.
I think if that was my dad, I would also say that fucking sucks. However, these are all things that you got to throw out there. We mentioned what's left in Minnesota. We've gone this entire podcast without mentioning the Timberwolves, the other half of this trade. What is left in Minnesota? And does this get them back on track? Because it took a 5-game losing streak for Tibbs to reportedly be like, you know what?
Too much of this.
I don't think this Jimmy Butler thing is going to work out. I think we need to trade him. So, like, they still have a Tibbs problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, well, you hope that Karl Anthony Towns can recapture some of that magic that he displayed pre-Jimmy Butler, where he looked like the generational Tim Duncan, like the Tim Duncan who shot threes, the guy who's going to be the most well-rounded offensive big man of this generation. If he can capture that, they can make some noise. You hope they rally around it in much the same way that teams often rally around a coach getting fired, get that bump.
The dead cat bounce.
The dead cat bounce
from early. Yeah.
But it'll be really interesting to see. It's Karl Anthony Towns' time to like stand up and be the superstar now.
Let's just take a quick. I think it's worth really actually like letting a listen in case listeners didn't see this Athletic interview with Sam Amick and Jimmy.
Yeah, do it
because it really speaks to life in Minnesota right now. Question: you played 41. This is after the Kings game. You played 41 minutes tonight, Jimmy Butler. This shit has to stop.
Yeah, it's incredible.
That shit has to stop. Why? We've got fucking 14 other guys. I feel like I'm watching the Mark Wahlberg Departed scene where he's like, you lace curtain motherfucker.
Yeah.
It was reported earlier today. It doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, I know, but 41 minutes, whenever I'm winning, I don't give a damn. And then he flips back and he's like, we've got fucking guys who can play. We've got to instill confidence in everyone. I don't think that he's the guy to do that necessarily. I think my confidence is high enough. I want all my guys to be successful. I want all these guys to play. Is that a combo with Thibodeau that I have to have? Yeah, and everybody wants to talk about how motherfucker's not healthy, he said of himself. Well, goddamn, we're playing 41, 43, 44 minutes per game. It takes a toll. So it turns out Tom Haberstroh was right. Turns out these guys do get tired. And it turns out Tom Thibodeau doesn't know what he's fucking doing anymore.
And that's his guy.
Yeah.
Tibbs was Jimmy's guy and Jimmy was Tibbs's guy. And he's like, this is fucking, and both of them were like, it's not working, us being each other's dudes.
Yes.
So I wonder now, like you introduce Robert Covington and Dario
That was
Saric.
all to say that I don't necessarily think Jimmy leaving is going to make everything better. In
No,
Minnesota.
I said, they still have a Tibbs problem.
Tibbs is the problem. The league has, in very real ways, passed Tom Thibodeau by, not just in the way that minutes are viewed today as something really to be monitored in a real way in order to alleviate player injuries down the road, and in the way that defenses are played completely differently than the way he made his mark in the league.
When he was with Boston as an assistant, that was what everybody talked about, like the Tibbs defensive model. And Charks has said this
Everybody's
multiple
on a
times.
string.
Yep.
It's all help.
That's
the
done.
Tibbs model's over.
That's finished. So what does Tom Thibodeau add? What is the value added of Tom Thibodeau now?
Not
I honestly
taking calls
do
from
not
other
know.
general managers.
I honestly don't know.
Running guys into the ground with their minutes. I don't know either. I think Wiggins' growth has been stunted, and you could chalk part of that up, obviously, to Jimmy Butler, but a lot of it, I think, has to do with Tibbs. And now it's, can Tibbs adjust on the fly with two guys who he brings in and are useful pieces? Is he going to stagger minutes? Is he going to shorten up his rotations a little bit?
Let's be a little bit optimistic, right? So Rocco is a nice, it'll make up for the Jimmy size hole that they have, especially in terms of perimeter defense.
Yes.
Rocco and Wiggins are at least athletic out there on the wings. Right. I would hope that one of the things that, as a Dario fan, that I don't feel like he got to do enough of in Philly is be a playmaker. He's like a really, really sweet passer. So I don't know if he could. I don't know if he's athletic enough to play point forward, but I would love to see more offense running through him, which is highly unlikely given all the different pieces and Derrick Rose and everybody else that's in Minnesota. But I would hope that whoever, whether it's Thibodeau or the next coach in Minnesota, is like, this guy can pass his ass off. Like, let's put him more in like these Jokic style spots where he can pass out of the post, where he can pass to cutters. Like, so that would be my hope. And now it's like, there are no excuses for Karl Anthony Towns, and there are no excuses for Andrew Wiggins. And when you watch the Wolves with the games that Butler's played this year, there was a marked difference in the body language of guys like Towns and Wiggins when it was like they were on the floor with Tyus Jones and Josh Okogie versus when they're on the floor with Jimmy Butler. So theoretically, you should get a response. And Towns is having a career worst season right now. So hopefully, like, that will cause him to have a renaissance.
I wonder when you're talking about their body language when they're playing together and whatnot. Like, it seemed like back in the days when they had just formed that unit and they were like getting out there, and it was okay in the same way that it was okay for the Sixers to come along at a certain pace, and it was okay for them to lose and figure it out as they were going. That like there's something fun and enjoyable and like carefree and disposable about it, right? There's no stakes. There's still stakes for them now. But I wonder if they like revert back into that, like they don't have anybody to really kick them in the ass. They don't have anybody to be a leader. Like, they still have to do something. This team doesn't get to go back and be like, okay, well, we'll figure it out eventually. They still have to figure out if they can like stop losing, 5 games in a row on the road. They're going to have expectations in Minnesota that come with making the playoffs and trying to like,
they also really need to, I mean, they're 29th in attendance with historically, I would say an old owner. I mean, like, they need to save this franchise, right? I mean, they need to like give people a reason to care about the Timberwolves.
Well, listen, Karl Anthony Towns averaged 25 and 12 in his second year in the NBA. Like, find that guy. Get me that guy.
What happened to that guy?
Yeah, find me that guy back. If he's the superstar that we thought he was 2 years ago, then you know what? There's a lot of teams in the NBA that would kill to have that entire roster with Karl Anthony Towns. Just have a guy of that quality.
Yeah.
So it's not a nightmare scenario. Like, figure it out. You have theoretically a budding superstar, a real superstar, a top 5 player in the NBA type level player. If that guy's still in there, great. Figure it out with him. It's not a bad situation.
And we can say from experience that they're getting 2 really good guys.
Yes.
Yeah. Good, and they're going to people that the other guys in the locker room are going to enjoy.
Yes, like Rocco and Dario will immediately have a positive impact on that locker room.
Yeah. Covington, everybody loves, and Dario, by most accounts, is the funniest dude. And
yeah, I mean, McConnell was even talking about like, you could be having the worst day, and then Dario would walk in the room, and like everything would change.
Right, which not a lot of laughs in that Timberwolves locker room recently.
Yeah, they need
could use a couple yucks. Right. All right, we've gotten through a lot of this trade. Did we miss anything? Anything else you want to throw out before we talk about the news that's unfolding as we record this podcast?
No, I mean, I think that I think I would just say that my attitude about this is just, we've been through so much as Sixers fans, and you're welcome, NBA, for like the constant content mill that we provide.
They stay the most interesting team in the league.
Yeah, and now, of course, a Wednesday night game against the Magic is probably going to be the most watched game that night. You know what I mean? Like, but I think that I'm so used to the chaos. You know what I mean? By now, like I just feel so used to them being the sort of the monkey that gets shot into space that I'm kind of like, yeah, maybe this will work out, or maybe Jimmy will light it on fire. Either one of those outcomes would not surprise me.
Content-wise, it's great.
Sure.
I mean, talking-wise, like just like as people who consume the league, Wednesday against the Magic have to be thrilled. This will be the most viewers that they've gotten in years, and we'll get 4 years. That's true. I mean,
if I'm Jimmy Butler, I go out and score 40.
Yeah.
If I'm Jimmy Butler, like, my mission in life is to be like, it's on now.
I'm going to put it on everybody.
Yeah.
All right, take us through what happened as we were recording. We took a little break, and you immediately saw what happened with in Houston. Turns out things in Houston still not going well.
Yeah, so things in Houston are not doing well. Their defense has fallen off a cliff. More concerningly, their offense looks horrible. There are a lot of circumstances that add to that, including the fight that Chris Paul was involved in when he got spit on, and James Harden's injury, but also their big name addition, Carmelo Anthony's been playing really poorly.
Hasn't gone well.
Now, I think you can make an argument that if the core of this team is not playing well, is dysfunctional, which has not been playing well. Harden and CP3 is still trying to figure it out. the rest of the team still trying to figure it out, then how can you expect Carmelo to,
just to automatically be better?
It's not all on him, but he's been playing terribly. And so Mark Stein just tweeted. So there was early reports that the Rockets were going to, quote, something like reevaluate the situation with Carmelo Anthony. And Mark Stein just tweeted that the Rockets have denied they are waiving Carmelo Anthony, but two sources close to the situation say Anthony has been informed that his brief time with the team will soon be ending. Anthony has been listed out as, quote, out for Houston's game tonight against Indiana due to illness. It is really shocking the alacrity with which this has come apart. It brings to mind like Allen Iverson with the Grizzlies. Like it
went downhill fast. Yes. It feels like we just had like relatively serviceable, still a superstar Melo, and now it's like when this goes down, and it sounds like it's going to, what happens with Melo? Is he like, does anybody bother picking him up? Is he done? Is he going to end up in China? Like, what are we talking about? Are we talking about Hoodie Melo in China?
It depends on what he wants. If he wants to wait and see if a playoff team wants to like take a flyer on him, you know what I mean? Like
he didn't even want to come off the bench to start the year, Chris. If he
gets released by the Houston Rockets, who are essentially turning around and saying that this is the reason, aside from Chris Paul being out and Jeff Bedzalik taking a 6-week sabbatical or whatever, and now coming back to run the defense. If they're saying Melo is the reason why we're not competing with the Warriors for the 1 seed in the Western Conference Finals, I think he's going to have to go play in Cleveland or Brooklyn or Orlando or Atlanta. You can go back to Atlanta,
some team where
like he is out of it. If he wants to start playing next week, like he's going to have to go play for a tanking team that just needs someone to bring 25 more people to the arena. Otherwise, he can stay in shape and hope that an 8th seed or a 7th seed who wants to take a run, like a Detroit, wants to try and like bring him on for nothing and see if he does anything in the playoffs.
Yeah, but in what role, I think, is the issue. He's already coming off the bench, shooting 32% from 3, not getting to the line at all. He's got his lowest free throw attempts per game of his career. So the idea was that you'd finally unlock this Olympic Melo spot-up guy who's so dangerous in the perimeter, can use his speed against the bigger guys, take other players out to the deep water and shoot threes off the catch. That was the utility. That was what you were hoping to get out of a Melo who was not the high-usage Melo of the past. Now, if you can't get that, if you can't get value there, what do you have? I don't know. Like he's not like an ISO Joe kind of specialist anymore.
No.
Like his specialty was scoring in a inefficient way with high volume.
Yeah.
No team that's trying to win games is going to let him do that.
I know where he should go.
Tell me. Don't say New York.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if you wanted him back.
One of the problems is that with Oklahoma and with Houston, they're both asking Melo not to be Melo. Because we have like this 15-minute hype reel of Olympic Melo that we think is going to be like, that's what he is. Melo needs to play in the mid-range. He needs to play in a stable environment where he knows exactly what he's supposed to do. He needs to play in a place where they're like, this is the deal, dude. And like, this is what you can bring to our team. He needs to go play with the master and the commander, the mid-range god, Greg Popovich in the San Antonio.
Oh my God.
Hear me out. First of all,
wow.
Same state taxes. So financially, like you're just making a completely lateral move.
The move also pretty short distance. You might even be able to keep whatever you bought in Houston.
That's right. And like, you want to shoot mid-range jumpers?
That's all the Spurs do
that's
these
all
days.
We do.
That's all we do, baby.
That's all we do.
Spell DeMar for a second.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm on board with this. I'm sure Shea somewhere, when he listens to this, will be very on board with it.
So the Spurs are a surprising 7-4. I'll say this. If that happened, and Popovich wins anywhere between 48 and 50 plus games, he should go into whatever is above the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And it should be immediately while he's alive
there
right
should be
now.
something named after him.
Right. I think we should name the league after him.
Yeah.
It should be the Greg Popovich Association.
Larry Brian O'Brien comes off the trophy.
Yes.
Instead of Jerry West, the logo should just be Pop wearing a Beto hat.
Yes. Listen, if they win 50 games with a team where like Patty Mills is the one guy shooting threes and everybody else is taking mid-range shots, and one of those guys is Carmelo Anthony, I mean, like make Greg Popovich the commissioner and also let him coach.
It's fucking amazing the spells that he can cast. You don't want him back in New York, right? Even though you guys are tanking?
No, come on.
All right. He doesn't want it.
The effect on the young guys is...
You want him in Philly?
Oh, fuck no. No, that would be. I wouldn't. I'm not even sure I would send it off to the G League to fucking draw people for whatever whatever the 87ers are now, the Blue Coats or whatever the fuck. Maybe a team if you're trying to put people in seats in Orlando or someplace like that where you're we know we're going to lose, we know we're going to be bad. Atlanta, you mentioned Atlanta. Actually, Atlanta would probably be a good spot for him.
Yes, there's a target for Trae Young, a professional scorer that Trae Young can throw the ball to instead of the Vince Carter and the bunch of other guys that he throws the ball to now.
We are not far away from when the Allen Iverson Memphis reference was right.
Denver.
Oh my God.
That was terrible for the Nuggets. Great for everybody else.
It's kind of tantalizing. I'm so bored of talking about Melo, but now all of a sudden I'm kind of really stimulated. Where should he go?
The Jazz?
That would be another fit where I'd be bless their hearts. There's very few teams where I'd be okay, he's not going to be able to do any damage there because if he does do any damage, what does it fucking
That's
matter?
why he'll probably run up on the Cavs or something like that.
Here's all you need to know about the state of Melo's career and the state of the NBA right now. Joe Ingles is a better player than Carmelo Anthony, and it's not close.
Oh, by a million miles.
It's not close.
Joe Ingles is an efficient player and way underrated.
Yeah.
What's going to happen with the Rockets, though?
Listen,
the Western Conference is so upside down right now. Just to wrap this up here, the Rockets are 4-7. The Mavericks have the same amount of wins as the Rockets. The Timberwolves have the same amount of wins as the Rockets. Only the Suns are worse than those three teams. That's really it's crazy. The Lakers just got to 500. The Jazz are at 500. The Pelicans are at 500. The Kings are barely hanging on above 500. It's a weird conference right now.
Here's the most shocking stat about the Houston Rockets. Last year, obviously, when they had their best lineup in, they were essentially a historic offense. They are 27th in the league in offense right now, 104.7 offensive rating per 100 possessions. That is more troubling to me than the defense, which is also abysmal. If Bizdelic, if his return can rejuvenate them in any way, then this guy is a god. But to me, the more concerning thing is their offense, because that should not be a struggle. Why is the offense this bad?
Yeah.
Very troubling.
They had health issues.
Sure.
They had suspension.
Right. That's part of it.
They had new pieces.
They lost some shooters, but 27th in the league in offense.
Not good.
Under the Cavaliers is what's wrong? Something
There's
is
a lot of things.
very,
a lot
very
of things
wrong.
wrong in Houston. Nothing wrong in Philadelphia. Everything's good and rosy. Chris has come around. I'm super excited. It's going to be great entertainment-wise. Minnesota, Godspeed. I have no idea what you have there. You need to launch Tibbs into the sun.
Point Dario.
It'll be very exciting. I want to thank Chris Ryan for being here, Jason Concepcion for being here. You've got Binge Mode. You've got NBA Desktop back. You're on Heat Check frequently, group chat. Is it a Sources Say week?
No, we have the Watch. And
The Watch's been killing it. Andy is still in parts unknown.
He's just around. He's
just around. He is in the ether. I like it. Shouts to Andy. I'm sure he was very excited about that. I saw him on Twitter.
Much more than I was.
Very excited about this. He was pumping all kinds of takes into his veins, so he'll have some content to consume while he's putting his show to bed. Isaac Lee, thank you as always for doing this. I want to remind everybody to please rate and review us on iTunes. Check out Heat Check every Monday, The Mismatch on Tuesday, Sources Say alternate Wednesdays, group chat, Corner 3, all of your Ringer NBA show needs. We will be back next Monday. Thanks for listening, gang. Bye.